So, just to keep it really simple, I mean, we're building a PC. Let's get it. YouTube, what is going on? It is your boy ChrisRod here, and today what we're going to be doing is simply building a PC so I can finally have another PC to do things here in the home office. So a full disclaimer before I even get into anything about the PC stuff and so forth. I am not, nowhere near, an expert at building PCs. I just happen to have a pretty decent sized brain and a little bit of knowledge in there to know what to do and how to do it. And I figure if I could put some parts in the car together, I'm pretty sure I could put stuff in the PC together. So I'm here to show you guys that anybody out there in the world, including me, a little grunt, can definitely get this done. So let's go through some of the parts. Some of those parts pretty much include, we got the motherboard over there. I don't know if you can see it like right there, you know, that motherboard. That motherboard is a MSI Meg X570 Unify X570 Meg. I don't know how you really pronounce all this stuff, but it's pretty good. And it's a Ryzen chip using AM4. I think so, yeah. It's an AM4 chip motherboard. I know that for a fact, so that's good. Don't buy the MSI motherboard. Don't do it. Get away from it. The X570 Meg Unify, whatever it was, get away from it now. Don't do it. I ended up having serious issues, and I was pissed. Anyway, get yourself a Gigabyte. Get one of these instead, man. Come on, let's go. Links in the description below to this and everything that we got in this video. Let's get it. You know, with that, we pretty much have a 5 series Ryzen 7. This is the 5800X model. Again, I don't know the specs and so forth, so I just know that it's somewhat good. That's fine. Cool, you know. As far as power supplies go, went with an EVGA 1000 watt, and the reason for that is because I plan on in the future kind of putting a better graphics card in it. So I figured let me just spend the extra money and get a 1000 watt right now instead of having to spend the money later. So just preventative kind of spending and so forth. Over here on my right, we pretty much got the Corsair fans. These are the QL120 RGB fans, and I currently have those right now. They come in a pack of 3. I have black and white fans, so that's going to be pretty nice. I'm actually pretty excited for that in a way. That's pretty good. So I kind of already have the gist of how they work, how quiet they are, and in my opinion, they're pretty good fans. Below that, we're going to have something different. So on my original PC, I actually have a air-cooled setup, and now I'm going to be going with the AIO. And with this AIO, there's always this speculation of where the block should go, if it should be higher than the radiator and the hoses with the air and all that. I'm aware of all this, but check it out. You guys are going to see how I'm going to do it with the car world knowledge that I have in my brain. So when it comes to memory, what did I pick? I went with Corsair's, what is this? Vengeance RGB Pro SL, the DDR4 sticks of RAM, 8 gigs a piece as far as each slot. So we got 16 gigs with the 2 packages, a total of 32 gigs of RAM, DDR4. The hertz, 3600 megahertz, they match it exactly alike. Like they're identical. Difference is I got black and white because I'm doing a black and white build. When it comes to speed for your storage, sure. Basically, I got an M.2 SSD, and this is the 980 Pro series by Samsung, and I went with this because my old build has an M.2, but it has the 970 series, I believe, and I just went with the 980 because supposedly it's better, and this I'm going to be using in particular as a main boot drive, so I'm not going to be really using this to store a whole lot in here. I actually do have a 4 terabyte SSD that's on the old build that I'll be swapping into this one. So this is just as a boot drive to make sure the speed is nice and, you know, fast. Last and final thing that I'm going to have on this list to show, actually not the last, second to last, we got a NZXT H7 Flow tower, the black version, and again I'm going with the black and white theme, so the black is going to be the main source. The last piece of the puzzle that I'm going to have to do in order to make this whole build necessary and work, it's actually going to be the graphics card that I have on my old setup, which is a Gigabyte 2070 Super, and that is a pretty good graphics card to my knowledge. I bought that recently, about maybe 6 months ago for like $300. I mean, how can you go wrong? But enough of me yapping and tell you guys all this crap that I got. Let's start getting the building and see if I can really do this without any help. So here we have our CPU. I'm hoping that this thing you can really see, but right here on the little corner, there's like a little arrow. You know, it's hard to see on the camera, but there's a little arrow right here in the corner, and that arrow you're going to be following directly onto the motherboard, which on this motherboard in particular, that same arrow is going to be right here on this top left corner. Just match the corners to each one, put that in, and you'll be able to clip it down and make it nice and secure. Little lever right here, pull towards you, lift it up, and then, you know, obviously you can't go back no more. Align the arrows. I can't see! I can't see! And this should just kind of drop in just like that.
Okay.
And then if you really want to make sure it's not going to go anywhere, just kind of give it a little small wiggle, but nothing too serious. That's pretty much secure, and all you got to do, bring this right back down, and then boom, your CPU is not going anywhere. So with our CPU into the motherboard, our next step is to just put the sticks of RAM into the motherboard. It's very easy. All you got to do, unlock all these tabs, or just, you know, spread them apart. You take all your sticks of RAM, line it up, put it right in, and you wait for the click. Once you know you hear that click, it's fully secure. Click there, click there. Now for me in particular, let's just get that out of here. But for me in particular, my next step is going to actually be putting my M.2 SSD into the motherboard. So let's get ready to, you know, get some screws out. We need this plastic that we don't need, and put an M.2 on. So I have my M.2 SSD, and all I gotta do, there's a little slot right here. You kind of want to put it in at an angle. So let's see real quickly. Simple angle, kind of put her in there, and it should kind of just hang like that. See how it's kind of, you know, not fully flat? It should hang just as so, because what you'll end up doing afterwards is pushing this down and then screwing it on to the next slot right here. But here's my first issue. I don't have a screw. Great. So I mean, screw not in the motherboard. I did remember something though. I think that the cases typically come with screws. So with that, I should be able to get that one screw for the M.2 SSD. So I'm opening the case. NZXT H7 Flow. Thank you. So turns out I'm a genius, and the motherboard packaging is what came with the screws. Go figure. And two, simple as it is, push the slot down or push the SSD down. Screw goes right on top. Nice and snug. There you have it. You got an M.2 in your motherboard. And don't forget that when you got to put this on, which is a heat sink, you got to peel this back. Now we're ready to slap this in. So basically, since we already have our, what was it called? Our motherboard kind of set up to where we need to do for the next step. I always like to do, just me, personal opinion, this is my own flavor of how to do it. I typically like to go to the case next, and then from the case is when I usually put my power supply. I take out the fans that originally come with the case. I set up my radiator, I set up my fans, and then I actually put that motherboard in. You know, life's funny. I found something very remarkable with this case that is going to allow me to put these fans in there quite better. It's very interesting, actually. This bracket does come off. I didn't know that. So, here's the bracket. You know what I'm saying? We're basically going to do white, black, white, have the fans on here, then attach everything onto the actual case. So I got the fans semi-installed onto the actual bracket, and basically something you want to make sure that when you install fans, and also like for cable management purposes, since everything's going to the back of the PC, I got the cables kind of going towards the back of the PC, and as well, fan orientation. You want to blow or wait?
What did he say?
Anyway, you're going to bring in air from the outside of the computer, so you want it to go in and through. And these fans, when it comes to them, basically the back plate of every fan, every manufactured fan possible, that's the way you're going to want it to point. So have the back of the fan facing where you want the air to go. And while I'm here, I think it's also a good time to get our good old AIO installed. First time using an AIO, so that's neat, I suppose. I guess it comes with some brackets and stuff, and that kind of hurt. So when it comes to AIO or radiator placement, how you should do it, you know, I've seen the whole videos of it being like this and like that and like that, this higher, this lower, high, low. I've seen all of it. How I'm going to be doing it is I'm pretty much going to be having this radiator at the top with the peak of the air going to the top of this part of the radiator. I'm going to have the hoses at the bottom because we're a car channel and typically air sticks to the top. So why would I put the hoses up top with the air? It just makes no sense. So we're going to have this part of the radiator at the highest peak. We're going to have the hoses at the bottom, and this is the block, this block, right? This is a block. It's going to end up going something like this right onto the computer. So we're basically going to have this kind of a looking setup. So it's nice to know I did this incorrectly. Wasn't supposed to put at least these fans on yet, so that's neat. I gotta take the fans out of this bracket and then put the fan with the radiator onto the bracket. Sure. Basically what I got here is I had to end up connecting the fans that I had before already on this bracket and connect them to the radiator. That way the radiator can be nice and, or AIO, whatever you want to call it. That way it can be mounted correctly onto the bracket. So currently right now I have basically all this clutter, and at this rate I kind of want to end up putting the motherboard into the whole system. So this is going to be my next step. But so far so good. At least we have the radiator with the fans pretty much installed. Next thing, again, I'm just going to be doing is putting the motherboard into the PC, and then we'll have our opportunity to put our block on correctly with our thermal paste, and then keep going from there. Guys, don't let this discourage you. Anyone could do it. I mean, I'm doing it. Are you serious? So now I'm pretty much ready to install this motherboard, and basically you're just going to follow the indicators that are on all over the actual motherboard, and then what you'll be doing is from these indicators you'll match them to the corresponding holes on the case of your PC, and it's just really that easy. So we're gonna start kind of maneuvering this in here a little bit. Gonna kind of hold this a little, get it down in there, use this as support. And considering it's a black case, it's hard to see, but this is pretty much lined up as is. It's all lined up on the holes. Now just to put the screws onto the motherboard. So now I'm kind of a little bit ready to actually do some cable managing and start connecting things to here. And guys, honestly, with the motherboard that I got, which is the Meg X570 by MSI, it pretty much labels everything on there. So from your USB, your 3.0 USB to your Type-C, from your Type-C to the F panel, from the F panel to the HC audio. And I'm going to be really honest with you, a lot of that stuff, I have zero idea what it means, but I know how to match things from one place to another. So now in a way, I'm kind of almost ready to start connecting my fans with the Commander Core that I do have, but there's also something else that we still have to do to set myself up for success. What I need to do is actually get the back plate of the chipset back plate for the pump. You know, when you get your CPU fans. Yeah, that. I want to take these two brackets off and then put the proper hardware that came with my AIO. So now that we got that back plate on with the proper hardware, we're pretty much ready to install the block onto the CPU, but you're definitely going to need some, you know, thermal paste. And be sure before you put the block on or any CPU fan on, do a dry test fit. So basically, I'm aware right now that my block is going to end up going something like this and straight onto the CPU. So this is going to be the basic setup that I'm going to end up having. So now that I know this, it's going to be easier for me to want to have to line everything up and put it the proper way one time. As far as thermal paste goes, look, you know, everyone has their spiel, everyone has their own way of how to do thermal paste onto their PC. Here's my simple step. Very simple. You see these little capacitors right here? You know, capacitors, these little things, whatever you want to call them. I think those are capacitors. You basically want your amount of thermal paste to be that kind of size. At least that's what works for me. I don't know what could work for you. Maybe something else. You know, you could look up any video you would like. to know what kind of a setup to put for the thermal paste, this is what I do, and it turns out pretty well for me. Simple dot right in the middle. Just like that. And this amount is good enough of thermal paste. It's roughly the same amount as that capacitor, and now I'm ready to put the block onto the CPU. Now we're ready to slap this thing on. This is the most cautious, most annoying part you may have to do. I've already cleaned, so I already cleaned this with alcohol and so forth. It had the thermal paste that came from factory. I don't care to use it. I just do my own thing no matter what. So we're set up here. Just gotta flip this and carefully put it right over. Also, don't forget, have your hardware already set up on your hands or whatever the case. Have it close by you. You just kind of want to snug these a bit, man. Don't go too crazy with it. Just snug it. You want to try and get this thing nice and even as possible. Once you got your screws snugged in just a tad bit, you're going to want to continue to keep tightening down the screws. I personally first do by hand in a crisscross pattern, and then I finish it off with the screwdriver just to get a nice torque out of the whole ordeal. So just look, crisscross pattern, just going from here, here, here to there. You basically want this thermal paste to be nice and even all through the CPU. And that's bottomed out by hand. That's bottomed out. This one's bottomed out. That's bottomed out. And now, guys, again, this is a car channel, just like a torque spec. 2 fingers, see that? 2. That's torqued. Click. Click. And guess what? Click. And now the pump is in, or the block / pump is in the CPU. And we're ready to connect all my necessary wiring for this particular step. Here we have our power supply, and basically the only cables that we typically need from the power supply to go to the computer are simply your motherboard cables, your CPU cables, your graphics card cables, and as well as your SATA power cables. And that's pretty much the gist of it. So I got these here, but I also have some extensions that I'm going to be adding on to the computer. That way I can have that white-black scheme that I'm going for. So all I'm going to do is just be connecting all these cables together, and we're going to slap all this on to that new case of mine. Should be going here. 4-pin. So now that our main cables are actually on the power supply, we're going to pretty much slap this onto the case. 2 final pieces that I got to put on this PC before I get ready to put all the cables together and so forth. Mind you, they are managed. But I basically have to install the graphics card, which is a 2070 Super, and as well as this bracket, which helps the graphics card from sagging. So once that gets on, we're going to be putting all the wiring together, and I'll be able to show you guys the final piece. Boom. GPU is in, and now I gotta put that bracket on so this doesn't sag too much. Graphics card is in, and now I'm ready to connect all these cables together.
Una canción, deja que ella te arrebate, pero no la maltrate. No es simplemente una mata. Préndele 2 cachas y sube para la nube. Deja